A quick note before we start the show. The first segment in today's episode talks about a death by suicide. Hi, I'm Anwiti Singh and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, we talk about the Matia transit camp in Assam, the state's first institute dedicated to house declared foreigners. We also give you a quick update on a United States intelligence report on India-Pakistan-China tension and conflict. But first, we talk about a death in IIT-Bombay which has raised questions about caste discrimination. Darshan Solanki, an 18-year-old first-year student of chemical engineering at IIT-Bombay, was found dead on his hostel premises last month.
He died by suicide on February 12, a day after his semester exam completed. He belonged to SC community and had taken admission to IIT on reservation seat. His family alleged that caste-based discrimination on campus as cause behind his death.
That's Indian Express's Pallavi Smart, who reported on the incident for the paper. She tells us that Darshan came from a humble background, and it was his dream to study at IIT-Bombay.
So, Darshan hailed from Gujarat. His family lives in Ahmedabad's Uttam Nagar locality. He came from a humble background. His father, Ramesh Bhai Solanki, is a plumber and mother Tarlika Ben is housewife. So, they both have not studied beyond class 10. Darshan was a first-generation learner from his family to go beyond class 12. About Darshan, according to his family, he was always someone who spoke less but would talk to people he was comfortable with. His family rather was glad that, he was getting along with friends on campus. He was good at studies. According to his family, Darshan was a bright student, someone who always liked studying. It was his dream to join IIT-Bombay and he in fact took a year's gap to be able to join this coveted institute. His father shared how, none of them knew about what is IIT until Darshan spoke about it so highly and was so determined to prepare for it. So most of the time, he focused on his IIT preparation or spent time with family.
Now, his death has once again put a spotlight on the allegations of caste-based discrimination in institutional spaces. And both activists and civil society members have come forward to criticize IIT-Bombay for its alleged discriminatory practices. This led the institute to set up a panel to investigate the cause of Darshan's death. In this segment, Pallavi tells us about this internal panel, its findings, and the allegations of caste-based discrimination on Indian campuses. Okay, so Pallavi, tell us about this internal committee that was set up by IIT-Bombay.
Okay, so the day when he died, few of the student organizations on campus held candle march and held student gathering. A day after his death, the institute administration set up a 12-member fact-finding committee to investigate the circumstances leading to his death. The committee included faculty as well as student representatives, including the representation from SC/ST students cell that is active on campus, which is formed with an objective to ensure welfare of students coming from the SC/ST community.
And what did they find? Did the panel confirm it was a death by suicide?
Yeah, it was considered death by suicide. The accidental death report was filed with Powai police station. However, after the family's allegation on caste-based discrimination and, also their request to investigate into Darshan's death, an independent probe is ongoing by Mumbai Crime Branch's SIT. So the SIT is police investigation. An internal panel was formed by the institute to investigate the circumstances that led to Darshan's death.
Right. And what did the internal panel say about the circumstances and possible reasons behind this suicide?
So the panel submitted its interim report. So in that report, the panel has cited his deteriorating academic performance as a possible cause and stated that there is no specific evidence of direct caste-based discrimination as alleged by his family. So this report stated that, he had obtained low marks in various courses and his academic performance was declining, especially in the second half of the autumn semester. Few student collectives on campus had also alleged caste-based discrimination, but the report of this panel concluded that none of them knew Darshan or had direct information of any issue he faced on campus. So, ruling out the caste-based discrimination, the report concluded that other than the statement by Darshan's sister, there is no specific evidence of direct caste-based discrimination faced by him during his stay at IIT-Bombay.
And Pallavi, did the family react to this finding?
Yes, Solanki's father, Ramesh Bhai, he has rejected the report stating that this is not truth. He told Indian Express the administration has been stating the same thing since day one, and he does not believe that an internal committee which had no external members would really bring out the truth. Also, referring to reports' assertion about his son's academics, Ramesh Bhai said that he had failed in one subject and that was no reason for suicide.
And his family and friends are not the only ones questioning the report. Days after the report was released, Professor Sharmila from the Humanities and Social Science Department of IIT Bombay sent an email to all faculty members. In this email, she said the committee did not, quote, consider systemic causes for the deathly prevalence of academic anxiety in this campus, unquote. She said the report was deeply disappointing and compared this report to the suicide of Aniket Ambhore, a final year BTech student in 2014, whose parents had alleged caste-based discrimination on campus, where the internal panel had also ruled out any discrimination. So Pallavi, do we know if Darshan had reached out to anyone or hinted that he was being discriminated against or told anyone whether he was facing any issues at the college?
So, according to the internal committee report, there is no record of him reaching out to either any facility provided on campus about the issues that he is facing. From his family, there is no such information. His sister, however, Janvi, has stated earlier that Darshan had mentioned about how there is caste-based discrimination on campuses of IITs as well, how students from a reserved category do face issues. But she also mentioned that it was Darshan's comment when he had come home once after joining IIT. But he did not mention about it as a serious concern.
Okay, so what happens next? Did the family say how they would like to move forward with this case?
So the family is now waiting to see what the SIT report concludes. They have already expressed that they are unhappy or do not accept the report that the institute's internal committee has submitted. So the family will decide the future course of action once they have more clarity.
Right, and now after Darshan's death, a debate has reignited, which we witnessed in the past as well, about caste-based discrimination on educational campuses. So when we talk about this particular institution, do we have any records that show such discrimination from IIT Bombay?
So there are no official reports, but a few years ago in 2014, Aniket Ambhore, a final year BTech student at IIT Bombay, had died by suicide. His family too had alleged caste-based discrimination on campus, following which a committee was formed, which eventually ruled out the caste-based discrimination. After Darshan's death, it also led to a bigger discussion about existence of caste on campuses of IITs, the premier technology institutes in India. So many students existing as well as former students, they came forward talking about their experiences of caste-based discrimination, mostly online, on Facebook confessions, on Twitter, etc.
Okay, and there are students and activists who are now demanding a bill to address these concerns of caste-based discrimination.
So the student collectives are definitely standing with Darshan's family. In fact, on Saturday last week, many organizations, including those of students, responded to an appeal by former Rajya Sabha MP Balachandra Mungekar for a protest at Mumbai's Azad Maidan. So the protesters demanded that Maharashtra government presents a bill or an ordinance to prevent alleged caste-based discrimination in institutes of higher studies.
And next, we talk about a detention or transit camp in Assam. After the National Register of Citizens, or NRC, was carried out in Assam, many residents found themselves excluded from the list of quote-unquote Indian citizens. And then out of these, a few of them were declared or convicted as foreigners. Now at first, these foreigners were housed in a detention center inside regular jails. But earlier this year, the Matia transit camp in Assam became the state's first center to exclusively house quote-unquote illegal foreigners. In this segment, Indian Express's Tora Agarwala joins us to talk about the Matia camp, how it came into existence, and life inside the camp. So Tora, can you start by explaining to us how someone is declared a foreigner in Assam and how are these people identified?
So to answer that question, we have to go back into history of Assam basically. So this is a state which borders Bangladesh, and for decades it has grappled with the issue of migration. And in the colonial times, migration from what is currently Bangladesh now has been happening to Assam. And since then, there's been a feeling in Assam, especially among the local native population of Assam, that because there have been so many people who've come from outside into their land, they sort of feel that their jobs, their resources, even their land will be taken over by these people who have come from outside. So basically, it's the most important issue which shaped Assam till date. And in the late 70s and the early 80s, there was actually an agitation in Assam, which was the anti-quote-unquote foreigner agitation. And this was a student-led movement and it lasted for 6 years. And this was basically a movement to expel foreigners from Assam or Bangladeshis. So, yeah, I mean, it's always been an issue. And as a result of that movement, it sort of culminated in signing off an Assam Accord. And after that, there have been multiple mechanisms to sort of detect foreigners in Assam. So, of course, one which happened, I mean, which everyone knows about and which dominated news cycles in the last few years is the National Register of Citizens, the NRC. That's a list of legal Indian citizens living in Assam. And for that to be considered a legal citizen in Assam, you have to prove that you've been living here before 1971. So that is basically the cutoff date for citizenship. So apart from the NRC, there are also parallel processes of citizenship determination in Assam. One is basically there is a border wing of the Assam police, and the main job of the border wing is to detect foreigners. And once they identify someone who they think could be a possible foreigner, they send that person a notice. So these cases are referred to foreigners' tribunals. These are not proper courts, but these are quasi-judicial courts which adjudicate citizenship in Assam. And these foreigners' tribunals, which are called FTs in short, they can declare somebody as a foreigner. And from that comes the term declared foreigner. So these FTs or foreigners' tribunals have been functioning in Assam. And periodically, they are detecting and sort of declaring people as foreigners in Assam. And that's where the term declared foreigner or declared foreign national comes in. And once a person is declared as a foreigner, there's a lot of chance that the authorities may pick you up and put you in a detention center.
Right. And speaking about detention centers, they have existed in Assam since 2010. But today we are specifically talking about the Matia transit camp. So can you tell us why this camp is significant?
So earlier detention centers were basically housed in jails across Assam, like regular prisons, like regular district jails you have. One part of that was a detention center. So many declared as well as convicted foreigners, foreigners who had sort of, come to India, overstayed their visa rules, those are convicted foreigners. So two types of foreigners, declared and convicted. So both these kind of foreigners would be kept in these detention centers, which were part of district jails in different parts of Assam. But in the last few years, there has been a lot of criticism about these centers because these people who have been branded as foreigners, they are made to share space with people who are also accused of other crimes, like hardened crimes, like, murder or rape. So human rights activists over the years have said that this is a violation of human rights because you can't keep them in the same place. So over the years, because it has faced so much criticism, in 2020, the government said that they were building a exclusive center to house quote-unquote illegal foreigners in Assam, and this was the Matia detention center. And the government has also decided to make this center because at that point, the National Register of Citizens, the NRC, had been published. And as a result of that, it was expected that there will be a lot of people who would be now foreigners because they'd be, out of this list. Anyway, so that is why this center was built in this place called Matia in Assam's Gwalpara district. And it's a huge center. It's supposed to have capacity to house at least 3,000 people. And, the main thrust of this building this whole detention center is that this is more humane detention because, inside the premises, there's also a school, there's a hospital, and it's basically not a jail. I mean, that is the main reason why this was built.
Okay, but it is called a transit camp and not a detention center, right?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, the government passed a notification changing the nomenclature of these detention camps and said they're no longer going to be called detention camps, but they're going to be called transit camps. Their reasoning was that, it's not like you're put in detention. It's not that negative, but you're basically in transit before you go to another place. So that is the reason. And I mean, officially, they didn't actually give a reason, but people we spoke to, they said this is also just a bit to make detention, this whole thing of putting so-called foreigners in detention, just to make it a bit more humane. So that is the reason why they did that.
Okay, so now it has a different name. But have they addressed any concerns raised by human rights activists about the way declared foreigners are being treated?
No, because most activists say that many of these people who have been declared as foreigners have been done so in a very arbitrary manner. And many times you see that people who have been declared as foreigners have later at a higher court been declared as Indians again. So human rights activists say that putting these kind of people who are probably, who have a chance of fighting for the citizenship and possibly getting declared Indian, for them, it's really bad to put them in, even if it's a transit camp with facilities and all, because at the end of the day, they don't deserve to be there because they are mostly Indians. And it's not like from there, they're going to be sent to Bangladesh or anything, because India doesn't even have a bilateral agreement with Bangladesh about deportation. So the activists still criticize the government's move of keeping these people in the transit camp.
Right. And how many people are currently housed there?
From the list I have, there are about 69 people currently. A majority of this is convicted foreigners, including people from Myanmar who fled the Myanmar coup in 2021. So a lot of Chin people. Apart from that, also Rohingya people are there. And few of them, I don't know the exact number, but a few of them are declared foreigners. But the majority are convicted foreigners currently who are in the camp.
And does this center work like a prison? Are the people allowed to meet their family, seek lawyers, or have any interaction with people who are on the other side?
So the Matia Center, which I visited at the end of February, I mean, obviously I can't go inside, but I visited with the family of a person who is a declared foreigner and who is currently at inside Matia. So it's a very huge center, and family members are allowed to go and visit. If someone in the family is in the center, they can go and visit. But I mean, it's more or less, from the sense I got, it's more or less like how it would be when you go and meet them in any other jail. Because 5 years ago in 2018, I had also gone and I had also done a story about a detention center, and then I had gone to a district jail with a family again to meet someone who was a declared foreigner. I mean, of course, both the jails are completely different setup altogether, but even then we had met the family through a window, basically. The person is inside and you're on the other side, and it it was very similar this time as well. From what I understand, those people who are inside, they're allowed to, roam around freely inside the center. But at 7 o'clock, they are locked in their respective halls. So the person we met, he's a declared foreigner called Abul Kalam. And he told us that all day they are allowed to roam around, but at night at around 7, they have to be locked inside their one particular hall where there are about 50 people together. So the point he made was that this place may have better facilities and, it has a school and it has a hospital. I don't know, though, in what capacity it actually functions right now. But at the end of the day, what he said was he's still in prison, even if it comes with better facilities or whatever. So, they are allowed to meet their relatives, but obviously you can't go inside. And for all practical purposes, you are, as Mr. Kalam had said, you are in jail.
So, Tora, Matia is a one-of-a-kind detention camp. But are there plans to build more camps like this in the state?
Yeah, so the fact that Matia was built, and that too, in such a scale, was because, as I said earlier, they were expecting a lot of people to be declared as foreigners right after the NRC was published. Because once the NRC was published, those people who did not make it to the list could go to foreigners' tribunals and fight their case. And if the foreigners' tribunal declared them as foreigners, then they would have ultimately had to go to a detention center like Matia. But now the NRC, since it's been published in 2019, the NRC has been in a limbo for all practical purposes. Nothing has happened. It's just that the list came out. 19 lakh people were dropped from the list. And it has not gone forward. People have not been able to even defend their exclusion from the list in these foreigners' tribunals because nothing has happened, because it's stuck in a limbo. So they had sort of preempted that, they thought that so many people be out and we'll need to house them all. So that is why they built it. The plan was also to build several more like this. But in Matia itself now, there are not many declared foreigners right now.
Okay, so in this camp, which is technically neither a prison nor a detention center, all the inmates, are they in for citizenship issues or are there other people inside for different cases as well?
So it was built exclusively to house foreigners. But recently, Assam had this anti-child marriage drive. And as a result of that, there were mass arrests, like over 2,000 arrests over just 3-4 days. So because so many people were arrested, the jail started running out of space. And the government passed a notification which basically declared part of Matia temporarily as a prison. So most of these people who were arrested in the child marriage drive, they were put in Matia. So currently there are about 350 people who have been booked for child marriage who are in Matia, and they are taking up most of the space. They are kept separately from those who are declared foreigners. But this is another point the activists have brought up. They said that, you had built this center so that, foreigners are not in a prison anymore. So that this is a detention. This is separate from a prison. But doesn't it go back to square one when you bring people who are meant to be in jails back to this particular center and they're sharing space again? And in fact, in end of February, the Guwahati High Court was hearing a case in relation to detention. And they really rapped the Assam government for this. They said that, you had built this as an exclusive center for foreigners. So how can you suddenly bring in people who've been booked under child marriage? And how can you encroach the space of this institution? Because this institution was made with long-term solution for this problem. So how can you do that? And then the government said that it's because they did not preempt this, and the fact that the child marriage drive really led to a lot of mass arrests and they had no choice. And they also pointed out that these people are living, separately from those people who are declared foreigners. So that is the government's take. But the High Court did sort of pull up the government for doing this.
And in the end, we talk about a US Intel report. The American intelligence community told lawmakers on Wednesday that it apprehends increased tension between India and Pakistan and India and China, with the possibility of a conflict between them. The report was a part of the annual threat assessment of the US intelligence community that was submitted to the US Congress. For India-China relations, the report noted that despite bilateral efforts, the border clash of 2020 strains the neighboring countries' ties and elevates the risk of armed confrontation between two nuclear powers that might involve direct threats to US persons and interests and calls for US intervention. As for Pakistan, the report said that the crisis between India and Pakistan is of particular concern because of the risk of an escalatory cycle between the two nuclear-armed states, given the history of strained ties, terrorism, and war between the two countries. The report also observed that though there has been a ceasefire along LOC since 2021, quote, Pakistan has a long history of supporting anti-India militant groups, and under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India is more likely than in the past to respond with military force to perceived or real Pakistani provocations, unquote. The report also noted violent unrest in Kashmir or a militant attack in India as potential flashpoints. Talking about this crisis, the State Department spokesperson, Ned Price, said that any group that threatens regional and global stability is a concern to the United States. You were listening to Three Things. Today's show was hosted by me, Anwiti Singh. It was written and produced by me, Anwiti Singh, with the help of Utsa, Sarmin and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.